In this video, I'm going to go over constructing the two Seppa that you're going to want for your sword. This isn't really a necessary step, but it is, again, one of those traditional pieces to the katana, and I like to include them. It just adds that little bit of authenticity to that. So, before I get into that, I just want to go over the last images here of the abaki. And you're going to need it for the making of the Seppa, but I just want to show you what the final looks like up close. You can see it's been final sanded. You can see how it's a pretty even line all the way around. And some of you may not like that, how thick it is. It does look kind of flat and thick. And if you don't like that, there's two ways you can kind of handle that. The first is to just sand it down so it's skinnier than that, but that tends to make it really fragile, kind of hard to work with. Your other option is to just kind of round this top edge off so it's not just a sharp angle, and if you bevel it a little bit, what you'll see instead when the light hits it is just a skinnier top piece and then like a rounded edge to the top. That might do it for you. If not, this is kind of how the way it is, but you can see the notch on the inside, you can see the notch on the back. Like I said, you really want it to be nice and clean and your edges to be really sharp. You can see how it's this back edge has been beveled to match the tang. And just as a final note, I'll show you what it looks like on the sword. So there it is. You can see how in the back it's flush. And you can see how in the front it wraps around the front of the blade, so it sticks out a little bit further than the blade does, but that's what creates that notch that it slides up onto like that. So that's it. So, moving on to the Seppa. Like I said, you're going to need your habaki, and you're going to need a piece of your 3/4 inch wood. Now, as you can see, this is a little bit skinnier than a 1/4 inch. You're going to want it to be about 1/8 of an inch thick when you start working with it. How you get there is kind of up to you. You can just kind of power sand it down. You can cut it to the thickness you want and then sand it a little bit smoother. You can see how this is actually a little bit irregular. This side's a little bit better. But you want it to be about 1/8 of an inch thick when you start off with it, and you can sand it down skinnier after that, but just for this cutting stage so it doesn't split on you as easily. You're probably going to want it a little bit thicker, and then like I said, you can sand it back down afterwards. And this is what you're going to make your Seppas out of. So, here is a finished Seppa, which I've already made, and how this is going to work essentially is you're going to make one, then you're going to make your Suba, and you're going to come back and make your other one, because they go one on either end of the Suba. The reason for doing it that way is because, like I said, when you try and do a template process, your holes are going to be two different sizes for your two different Seppa. That's because when your tang has a taper like ours does, you know, the thickness here is not going to be the same thickness 1/4 of an inch down the tang. Therefore, your hole is going to be a different size, and you want them to line up. So that's why you make one, then you make your next piece, and you make your next Seppa. So that's how that's going to work. And how I do this basically is this is going to be the width of your final sword and the saya. So that's going to be as wide as your handle is. It's going to be as wide as your sheath is. And how you get that dimension is that's essentially 3/4 of an inch thick. As you can see, I've drawn the line here already. And basically what that allows for is that allows for a 1/4 inch thick blade, like we have, and then it allows for a 1/4 inch on either side of the blade when you start making your ska. So that's the reason for that. It kind of makes the proportions nice and even. And then the only thing you have to worry about is what your length is from bottom to top here. And basically how I allow for that is, like I said, you have your 3/4 of an inch, and then when you place your 3/4 of an inch next to your abaki, you can see you've got a space on either side. All I do is to determine your length from the bottom to top here is just to continue that reveal all the way around. And that's how you get this nice even line all the way around, and that'll line up with the kuiguchi of your saya, or your sheath. and it makes a nice even reveal all the way around. Now you can see on the back where it's more, it's a little bit fatter in the curve. You can see it doesn't really match up as well with the angles, but that'll work out just fine. And you can also see that this follows the line of the abaki. You don't have to do that. You can make them both so they have that fatter curve to them. It'll make it a little bit easier for you when you start making your saya and your ska, because all of this is the final shape of both of those pieces. It's essentially the final shape of all of your sword. So if you want it to be a little bit fatter curve on top here, feel free to do that. And then the hole is just going to stay the same. It's going to be center, and then the same for, you're going to have the same method for finding how tall it needs to be from bottom to top here. So, how do you get this far? Well, you're going to start off, like I said, with your 1/8 inch piece of wood, and you're going to draw a line 3/4 out. That's going to be how wide your seppa are going to be. And then you're going to draw a center line. As you can see, the hole lines up with the center line. Now the reason why you draw the center line through there is because then you line up the seam of your habaki with it. And that keeps your hole dead center with the hole of your habaki. So once you have that line drawn out, and how I do that is you basically have your 3/4 inch, you have your center line, you place this on like you have it lined up, and then I take a mechanical pencil, the kind that you click out more lead to, so you have a long piece of lead, and then I draw the line inside there, making a template. That's that template process. But you can also use a nail, or basically anything that's long and skinny enough to get in there and sharp enough to make a line. So once you have that taken care of and you have that inside line, all you're going to do is just take your utility knife and cut that line all the way out. Now how you're going to want to start is you're going to want to start like you would trying to do a relief carving, where you just cut straight down first and make an indentation, and then you can continue making that cut a little bit, and then you can bring your chisel in and just, or you can even use the edge of your knife and make it like a bevel cut there, and then you can make another straight down cut. Because it's so thin, you want to be very careful with how you do this, because essentially if you push down too hard, or if you draw your line straight across with the grain, there's a good chance you're just going to go whoop and go right through it, and you're going to have to make another one. So that's something to really keep in mind, is how thin and how fragile these pieces are going to be when you're working with them. So just keep that in mind. And then as you can see, I mean, this is pretty much going to line up just like so. So that's basically how I go about making them. And there's, you know, once you have that cut out, then, as I mentioned, you're going to find your front and your back by basically taking this reveal here and bringing it all the way around the back, all the way around the front. And then you're going to draw your square lines, not freehand like I am doing, but you're going to draw square lines. And you're going to cut out that rectangle shape. Then you're just going to round your corners off with a file or with your knife. And that'll be that. As I said, for the shape of the seppa, if it's your first time, I would recommend making both ends have a fatter curve, like so, because that's really just going to make your process easier later on when you go to shape your ska and your saya. Because, like I said, this is the final shape of your sword. And that'll make it all line up really nicely. And again, it's just really fragile to work with. Take your time. They're really easy. They're also really easy to mess up and to break. So unless you want to make a whole bunch of them, which is good practice, but very annoying, be very careful with it. You know, just watch your fingers especially too, because you're working with a smaller piece. And once you make one, stop, go back, make your suba, which I'll cover in the next video, and then make your second one of these. And then after that, like I said in the next video, we'll cover the suba, and then from the suba we'll go on to the ska.